Build creative confidence. Beat the inspiration addiction. Join the Writer's Gym. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, hi. It's so nice to talk to you.
It is really, really lovely to see you and talk to you for this. I was thinking we met slightly before the world changed shape entirely.
We did, yes. Yeah, we met at Ms. Lexicon, was it? A Ms. Lexia weekend in Leeds. That was just lovely. And we thought, oh, this will happen every year. And won't that be great? And then it did not.
And it did not. And it was great. I met you there. I met Rosie Garland, who was on our previous series as well. And it was just such a lovely chance to meet people and find all these different stories and careers in different levels of where they were going and where they wanted to get to. And your wonderful best-selling novel, which we are going to talk about in a minute, is what you were working on at the time. I think you'd handed it in. You were some of the way along, weren't you? But not all of the way.
I had just got an agent, actually, really quite just sort of a little bit of time before. So yes, but I was still very much in the middle of working with it though, because I sort of got my agent, before the book was finished. It was still at a kind of quite a chaotic point. So yeah, I was really still just kind of writing and going, oh my God, how do I make sense of all this? So it was really great having this weekend just talking about writing, meeting lots of other writers at different stages, of their careers. So it was very helpful.
And had you just won the Lucy Cavendish Prize, or was that the year before?
I think that had just happened, and it was through that I met my agent, Nell Andrew, brilliant agent, on the judging panel for that competition. And we'll probably talk later maybe about, I feel very passionate about why competitions can be a really good thing. So I sort of signed with her through being on the shortlist and having talked to her. And amazingly, she took me on despite the complete chaotic. It was, it was very sort of 50 first pages that were very polished, and then this mass of kind of chaotic madness that was the rest of the novel that somehow she managed to see something in.
I think that's a really good thing for people to hear, though, because it is in so many ways. It's a bit like dating. It's not about finding somebody who wants to see the perfect, polished version. It's, do you connect with this other human being?
Yes, exactly. Do you connect? Do they connect with your writing? Do you connect with their sort of vision for your writing? Because I thought I was writing a book that was sort of aimed at a younger audience. And almost the first thing she said to me was, I don't think this is a young adult book. I think it's an adult book. And I was fine with that because I hadn't really started writing for any audience in particular. It's just as it gone on, I thought, okay, well, this is what it is. But she was like, nope, I think it's this, which was different. And it just made me see it in a different way that was actually really useful. And not everybody might have liked that, which is fine, but for me it was really helpful actually, because I had just been sort of working on it for so long by myself. Actually I was kind of like, I've no idea what this is. So it was nice having somebody who could kind of see through all of that.
Anyway, the reviews that I was reading and just the lovely comments, but one of the things that they compared it with was sci fiction, it was Game of Thrones, it was steampunk, it was high fantasy. And what I think made me so happy about seeing that description, seeing it reviewed by the New Scientist on one side and then SFX magazine over here, and that it's fundamentally not about what category am I in, that chaos that you talk about is actually confidence in a way. It is having all of those facets.
Exactly. Yeah. I think all of us who are writers are huge readers as well. And we might have our favourite genres, but I read in all sorts of genre. And I think maybe another thing that happens is your first novel, because you spend a long time writing it, that basically everything you love goes into it in a slightly, in a chaotic way. And so there were definitely sort of aspects of just all the books I loved and all the things I loved, and just, I think this is cool, this element, and this is a bit steampunky, and here's fantasy, and here's sort of eco-fiction, and here's historical fiction. And for me, I didn't really worry about thinking, it should be this genre or that genre. And I certainly didn't feel that that I had to write in a certain genre to make somebody want to read it or buy it or whatever. So it was very, very freeing. And I think it's been nice because you do hear that. You hear sometimes the advice that, oh, you need to pick a genre. And I'm just not sure that necessarily always holds. So it's been really nice that people have seen that it's different genres, and some people have felt it's more this or more that, but have basically seemed to be fine with the kind of the genre mashup of whatever it is.
And we should probably take a step back and actually say what all of this is for anyone who is just coming in and hasn't met it yet. But before I do that, I will just say the other thing is it feels like a coming of age story for me.
For me as well, actually, that was really important for me with one of the characters who was born on the train. So it's set at the end of an alternative 19th century where the only safe way of crossing what used to be Mongolia and Siberia, and which has now become a sort of strange, ever-changing wastelands, is by armoured train. So a version of the Trans-Siberian Express, a fantastical version. And the story follows three main characters: an orphan, the child of the train, who was born on the train and has sort of lived on it her whole life and has been very loyal to it, but is now beginning to question her loyalties. So she's one of the main characters. And then a young woman who has boarded the train under an assumed name and in search of answers in terms of what happened something disastrous happened on the last journey, and her father, who was part of the train crew, was blamed for it. So she wants to find the truth. And then the final character we follow is a disgraced scientist who thinks that he can sort of use and exploit the strange nature of the wastelands to sort of salvage his reputation. And so we follow the train. The train sets off in Beijing, going towards Moscow, which takes 15 days, supposedly. That is a very dangerous journey. And on the way, the dangers start piling up, and the safety of the train comes into question.
And for Weiwei, because she has grown up on the train, knows where all the hidey holes are. There's a lovely thing about there are some she's grown out of and there are some she's discovered, and it was just such a beautiful way of looking at life. But then she kind of does the impossible in that she finds something and someone she didn't know was there from the world outside her world, which I find so compelling, not only from the circumstances that you've set up, but also from the point of view of it being a coming of age story. This friendship with somebody she shouldn't be there, B, she shouldn't be talking to, she should be saying, oi, out, reporting. She strikes up a dangerous friendship. And obviously I won't say what happens, good or bad, but fundamentally something that I enjoy about it is that following your instincts, there's a reason for your instincts, that you're growing in directions you might not understand as a young woman, but something that you don't have words for is guiding you. A morality and understanding is taking you somewhere.
I think that's a really nice way of looking at it. And yeah, as you say, I think there is a coming of age element, and she's always been kind of kept safe by the train crew, by the walls of the train, and she's always had these boundaries that she hasn't pushed against. But I think when you become a teenager, you do start pushing at these boundaries and sort of letting things in that before would have been dangerous or you would have run away from. And now the things you might have run away from actually seem enticing and exciting, and you don't know whether they're going to be positive or negative, but you're sort of open to that. So that was a fun part of it to write. And, and I think it is an important part of growing up. And
it's an important part of world political awareness as well, that the goodies and baddies one might just grow up with, life is actually more complicated than that, and she has to deal with an awful lot of that, doesn't she?
Yes, exactly. That there are rules on the train that are meant to be keeping everybody safe, but she's starting to push against that and to doubt the things that she's been told, which again I think is kind of an important thing for all of us, maybe.
And it's done so well, Sarah, and so rightly. I'd love to do a little go back in time now and talk about how you got there, because aside from everything else, do you still run the Leeds Centre for New Chinese Writing? That's going.
Yes, I help run that. Yes. At the University of Leeds. Yeah.
The University of Leeds, and of course, when we met at Ms. Lexicon, that was in Leeds, so I got to know that that whole side of the world with
yes,
back then.
The good side, Yorkshire.
Oh, absolutely. Well, PhD from Hull, you know. Let's go right back. Did writing happen to you early on? Did writing feel like the thing that was part of you, or how did you discover that?
Yes, I definitely. And I am that terrible cliche of a fantasy writer who read The Hobbit at a young and impressionable age and decided that this was what she needed to do with her life. And I was going to be a writer. I think this is in junior school. At some point I read it. I was going to be a writer, and this was the kind of thing I was going to write. And I have stayed loyal to that decision and that kind of obsession ever since. So it's taken a long time. So I always loved it. So The Hobbit was the sort of the gateway drug, and that led me to all sorts of other fantasy books, horror, science fiction. You know, my parents were and are big readers. So my mum was handing me Jane Eyre on the one hand, and my dad was handing me Isaac Asimov. And then Terry Pratchett came in and Agatha Christie, and I just upped it all up and was writing my own very derivative versions of various, especially kind of high fantasy, epic fantasy. Had all sorts of really bad epic fantasy stories in my teens that it was always the things that involved a map. I loved making the maps as well. Again, I think this is maybe a fantasy writer cliche. I don't know if you did this, drawing your own maps.
I'm dyspraxic, so I'm just happy if I know how to get through the door without bashing my arm scarlet. But something that did occur to me in that, and I don't know how much this is just me projecting my own interests onto it, but you mentioned Jane Eyre and Pratchett, and one of the things that I suppose my love comes from in reading is that it is getting you to work on your own morality, your own understanding of how the world goes, that both of them, what Pratchett calls headology for the witches' books, and Jane Eyre is all about headology. It is all about having that sense that you are going to interpret the world in your way. You're not just in somebody else's genre. That feels very consistent.
Yes, yeah, completely. And I hadn't even thought about that as Jane Eyre being, that's a lovely Pratchett plus Pratchett Bronte combination, but that is so true. And I think it is really good reading these books that might be adult books that maybe get shelved in the adult section in libraries, but I think reading them as a teenager, you might not think of it in that way as ways of forming your own worldview or morality, but it definitely has. And Pratchett especially, I mean, Pratchett is the author I have come back to the most, and I just basically have his books on rotation. So I think that the idea of headology is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's behind a lot of things for me as well. So we're not going to shoot all over the place in time, but I'm going to stay in the fairly distant past for a couple of minutes. You knew you were a writer, or you knew you wanted to be a writer. What helped you, or what guided you? Did you keep writing all the way through? Did you approach agents or do other courses before where we met?
It's funny, I was so into it in my teenage years, and then I got to university and didn't write for quite a while, and then started to get into it again when I was living abroad, and it was partly out of homesickness. I think I was living in Beijing, I was working there, and I sort of started a novel that was based in Yorkshire. Mostly I think out of a slightly a slight feeling of homesickness, and that kind of got me back into reading. So this was a few years out of uni, so sort of mid-20s. And then when I came back to Leeds to do a PhD, I was still writing, but it was definitely just a hobby. And I joined a really low-key, lovely creative writing group in a local cafe, partly just to meet people because, I moved back and didn't know anybody. And there was this lovely group run by a brilliant teacher. It was a sort of gentle introduction, it was just, let's talk about some existing stories and then write our own, or let's use some prompts or some pictures and just write. And it was all about, you don't have to be good, you don't have to be, this is not kind of learning and, how do you write? It was, let's just write because we want to and it's fun. And that was so important. And through that and her, I joined the Leeds Writers Circle. I kind of found this huge writing community in Leeds that has been absolutely pivotal in everything. And then a couple of years as I started doing that, I decided to take it a little bit more seriously. And I applied for a workshop in the US called Clarion West, which I don't know if you know of it already. It's
I've read your biog, so I looked it up based on that, but do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it's for speculative fiction writers, so science fiction, fantasy, horror, and it's a 6-week workshop. So it is quite a commitment. And there's one in Seattle, which is Clarion West, and one in San Diego, which is just Clarion. And it's been going for years and years and years. And it's very well funded. And so they have, the very sort of generous scholarships and financial help and things. So I think people in this country especially can think, oh, it's too far, it's going to be really expensive. But actually, I think it's sort of more doable in some ways than some of the shorter UK-based courses. So I always recommend people think about it if they're writing SFF. And it was amazing. So there's 6 weeks, and I realised not everybody can take 6 weeks away from their lives. I was doing a PhD at the time, so just told my supervisor.
So it was part of your life. It was what was already going on in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And it was absolutely amazing. It was really full on. It's kind of trying to squeeze, I don't know what it's trying to squeeze, almost a kind of MA into 6 weeks. They have different tutors come to teach for a week and give up their time. One of my favourite writers is Kelly Link, and she was there. George R. R. Martin was there the year I went as well. Chuck Palahniuk. It was, they get really great people to come. But actually, the important thing is that you're writing with, I think there's 18 people who are on the course, and you're sharing your work and critiquing it. Everybody goes round and shares their thoughts about your work, and then you answer and talk about it, which is really daunting because I'd never done a formal creative writing class before. But it was brilliant. They were very, very supportive. And yeah, so having all these different voices talking about your work and then listening to all these other voices, reading them, was just really a revelation. And I feel when I'm writing now, I can almost still guess what the different people in the class are going to say.
They're still characters in your head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was a really big turning point. And also through that, I kind of learnt about the whole SFF, sort of science fiction and fantasy world, and that there are these things called conventions, and and there were huge numbers of journals and online magazines that I was only vaguely aware of and hadn't thought to start submitting to. But after Clarion, I started writing short stories. And I should say it's more focused on short stories, the workshop, than novels. Although a lot of people were wanting to write novels as well.
Cautious Traveller's Guide to the Wastelands was part short story to start with?
Yes. So I wrote the short story that the novel grew into in one of the weeks. It was in George R. R. Martin's week, which was very funny because it was meant to be. This was just at the time when Game of Thrones was really getting big. I think the TV show had just started. And I should say as well, we did ask him. We sort of said, "Okay, George, we know you have work to do yourself. Why are you here?"
And what did he say?
Well, it was lovely, actually. He said, well, because he was a bit older then, and he said that a lot of the people who helped him when he was a younger writer had passed away. So he was basically kind of paying it forward and wanting to help and give his time to newer writers, which I think was really great. And he really did give his time. He read in real detail and gave incredibly detailed feedback. I think the morning sessions were meant to just finish at 1 o'clock or something, and then we had the afternoons free, but not with him. We had to come back after lunch because he hadn't finished. It took us so long to get round. So he really, really gave very detailed feedback. He was supportive but quite harsh, the feedback, but very useful. So the story that The Cautious Traveller's Guide to the Wastelands, as it was called then as well, was one of the first short stories I ever got published. So after I came back from the workshop, I had a bit more confidence to start submitting stories to short fiction venues, to magazines. And this one got accepted by Interzone, which was a really big thing for me because Interzone, it's a big UK sort of science fiction and fantasy magazine with this lovely long history. And they illustrated the stories as well, which was very exciting.
Particularly for someone who loved maps and loved that side of writing.
Exactly. And who has not a visually creative bone in her body. So would love to be able to draw, but really can't. Being illustrated was very exciting.
Although also a publisher's dream because you won't be clamouring to do those bits for yourself.
Oh, I will not.
Yeah. As you know a little, well, I say you know a little bit about the Writers' Gym because you've been part of the Green Ink sponsored write for Macmillan Cancer Support. So you know where where things have come from. And the Writer's Gym is all about finding ways we get the writing off the pedestal in the corner and into a number of exercises and warm-ups and check-ins in and community throughout the week so that writing becomes normalised. I'd love to know, was that something that came, I don't know if naturally is ever the right word, but was that a memo you had from an early point, or has it sort of come and gone in terms of writing being part of everyday or every week life?
Something I've really struggled with, actually, because I feel like I'm not very good at sort of routines and organisation. And I would love to be somebody who manages to sort of say, okay, this time every day, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit down and write. And I'm definitely going to write every day. But I just don't. I find it quite difficult to do that. My brain doesn't work in that kind of way. You have other things happening. So I always really love hearing about other people's routines and kind of talking about it and getting these ideas. And I've sort of had to just find what works for me, which I think is actually exactly the same idea. It's just, I think sometimes we think of routine as, oh, you've got to do it this way. And it's got to be sort of, I'm sitting at my desk, writing at a certain time.
It needn't.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I love listening to podcasts, to your podcast and to other writing podcasts. And I think that one of the reasons is that you just hear so many different approaches.
Yes.
And then you think, oh, actually, I can kind of have my own way or find my own way or try somebody's idea.
I hope for everyone as well as me, just such a reassurance that when you have best-selling after your name or before your name, depending on how they are posting it, you know, that these feelings are still utterly there, human, normal, that we're sort of looking for permission in a way, I think, to know that there isn't a normal and that some other person hasn't magically got it all sorted. It is about getting in touch with whatever is going to do the job for you, I think. And the thing that strikes me again and again is that I have my landing pattern. There might be coffee, there might be music, there'll be a bunch of things that bring me into the zone. But that's the purpose of the ritual. The ritual isn't there for its own sake. It's there to bring me into the space. And I think if I was sort of betting, which I'm not, it feels like there's points where people have got as far as they know that to be the case, that the Sarah Brooks way of doing this will be different to the Rachel Knightley way, will be different to the George R.R. Martin, will be different to the everybody else. And it's got nothing to do with worthiness, brilliance, blah, 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 you know, or anything. It's just to do with being a unique human and knowing you've got the permission to find that.
Exactly. And yeah, I just, as I say, I love finding these different ways. I remember talking to the author Jennifer Saint, who says that she lights a candle. That's her little ritual. I thought, oh, I could have tried that. And I like candles and scents. So I tried it and it did not help me at all. But, you know, I had my room smelled nice. But it was just a nice thing to try.
About the candle, I'm grateful to the candle because it uses my guilt really well. I have to babysit the candle. If I light a candle, I can't bugger off and organise a drawer or go and do the washing. I've got to be in the room.
Yes, my cat is going to, burn herself, or it's going to burn the whole flat down or something if I leave it.
You have a feline overlord, that changes things.
Absolutely have a feline overlord.
I used to have a feline overlord.
Okay. Yes. I mean, my feline overlord at any point in the day will sit and look at me judgmentally. But I do feel that when I'm meant to be writing, she's looking particularly judgmental.
Does she go for candles?
She doesn't actually. I mean, she is very good with, but I just worry that she is. So I think I find the extra worry with the candle actually is not helpful for writing as nice as the idea is.
I have to say, and not to advertise, I sometimes use imaginary candles. I do. If it's summer and one of the people on the Writer's Gym team, Holly, she lights candles in spring, but there's something in me that somehow doesn't quite compute that. So I have an imaginary candle. I'm like, right, I've lit the candle, or I use a physical candle, I put it there and don't light it, but the candle is there, which means I can do my vomit draft of this thing, or I can do my next layer of this other thing, and it keeps me there.
Oh, because I think it's about tricking your brain, right? Because I know people, there's an app where you can grow trees and things, I think, which I
have heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's just something that's, yes, maybe just looking at the unlit candle is still going to have the same effect. And it's tricking, because I think that's what I do, is to sort of, I have various ways of tricking myself into just writing. And the most common one is just going somewhere else. And, if I'm in a cafe, or if I'm outside, or if worst comes to worst, if I'm, sitting at the top of the stairs in a sort of unusual place in the house or whatever, I'm just like, oh, well, this is just an informal, I'm just kind of sitting down and playing around. I'm not at my desk needing to write and, make beautiful words. And I think it's tricking yourself to think this is not important, which I realise is kind of not what some of the advice
doesn't count.
Yes, exactly. So I know some of the advice sort of says, oh, you should take your work seriously and you should feel it's important. And I think if that works for you, then great. But the opposite works for me. The thing that frees me up to be able to write and to get rid of those nasty little voices. I think do you call them brain goblins?
Oh, so I call them should fairies.
Should fairies. I'm sure there's a folklore link to what Rachel says about this.
Shooting the should fairies was the piece I wrote.
Yes.
It's on Substack.
Right. And I love that. They should. Yeah. And that's how you can ignore them, because they're not going to notice you if you're just kind of like, oh, la la la, I'm just, writing for fun.
Do you know that it does grow on me that it's anything where you're not trying to change the feeling, you're trying to change your behaviour, acknowledging that the feeling will still be there and that the feeling is not in charge, gets my vote.
Yeah, completely.
It's so important, actually. So that thing you just described where you're sitting at the top of the stairs, my one is sofas, and it's copying what my lovely cat Teddy used to do. 1 week there would be only this chair in the whole world. That was the chair and no other chair would do. But then next week it was this sofa and no other thing would do. And I'm like that. I will have if I go to different places in the room, I can trick myself in that way. Things need to be in different spaces and only this space will do for this thing for this reason at this time.
Right. Exactly. And I think for me, it's getting out of routine. It's not the same place, the same time every day. It's actually the opposite. And that's what works. Whereas I think for some people it is, if I'm sitting in this desk at this chair every time, I know that what I should be doing. But
Yeah, it is interesting. It's finding what spaces your brain responds to. Because I used to think I could only write in cafes, and until lockdown, I was still of the impression that was how I had to. And what's changed is the had to. I still go and treat myself to that. But for me, it was an important difference between I have to and I choose to. That I can do this here. I have to say, learning to close the door and boundaries around just saying to people, this is my time until such and such. If the door is closed, the door is closed. I have to say, recording podcasts also really helps with that, but because you have to. But it's making that have to in your head, being in charge of the have tos.
Exactly. And I think, one thing I found difficult about writing was when I'm at my laptop, I'm sort of thinking, oh, but there's other things I should be doing. I should be doing my day job is to work at a university. There's always stuff to do. And there's always, admin or research, and which, especially when it's kind of admin, can sometimes be easier to do than the writing. So it's that if I'm trying to write, I'm just all this, oh God, I've got all these other things to do that I should be doing rather than this. So I think there's those boundaries as well, kind of saying, actually, this time I am just going to ignore all those emails or ignore that other part of my life that I need to be doing and go, well, this is also an important part of my life. And, and especially you're working with a publisher, you do have deadlines. So you have to do it, but it can be hard when you don't have a structure of, nobody's in the office telling you what to do at a certain time. It's just, you've got to make yourself do it. As you say, you've got to close the door and go, now this is writing time or podcast time.
Yeah, it is. I'm just remembering, I don't know if you heard it, but when Nigel Planer was on the Writers' Gym, and his wonderful phrase for if you didn't start the day with writing, if you did let yourself do the emails first or do the business admin first, well, that's today fucked. or no, that's the day fucked. And I hear Nigel in my head, walking in here, I hear in my head, even if it's journaling or a minute literally of notes for something creative I'm going to do, it makes a difference. And then I say to myself, wow, that made a difference. I will now do that every day. Guess what doesn't happen? But I do it more, and I am cumulatively doing it more. And I suppose for me, it's that it's reminding me I am a writer. It's about not waiting for the praise from the outside world to say, yes, you are. It's about being it now and having the joy in it and the curiosity in it now.
Yes, I think so. And I think keeping that joy as well can be tricky. I've definitely found with the first, the first novel where nobody is waiting for it. It's quite a joyful experience. You're just kind of writing it for yourself, and it is fun and you can play around. And I think that can sometimes, when you get into editing that, or when you're trying to work on the second book, that can get lost a little bit because it almost feels like, oh, this is a job now. And again, talking of tricking myself into things, I try and trick myself into sort of forgetting that there's a contract for it, or that anybody's waiting for it, and just kind of going, this should just be, I'm just enjoying writing this and I'm just playing around, and that makes it joyful.
And I'm still the kid that fell in love with The Hobbit.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Knew that this was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
What supports you or motivates you in terms of process content? Do you like to have an idea push you to the desk? Are you more already there doing it?
As on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. I think I like writing longhand in notebooks. So I think for me, I just kind of play around in the notebook, and that's what I take to sit in the garden or to work at the top of the stairs or whatever. And I just kind of just write. And when I find the exciting thing that I think, oh, this is new and cool, or that connects these two plot points that I've been struggling with, that's when I think, okay, yes, now I can run to my laptop and try and get that down before that little spark vanishes.
You're making me realise why I love freehand, why I love notebooks. It's like when I'm learning guitar or when I'm rehearsing theatre, I always have a this doesn't count run. Or when I'm working with a public speaking client, or, if you have a speech, if you have a monologue, I always give them a this doesn't count run. And that's what it is, isn't it? It's taking yourself away, and it's yet again, this doesn't count. We talk about it as stealth writing sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that idea. Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I say this to my students as well at the university. A lot of them they're writing dissertations or PhD theses. And I think there's this kind of fetishization of the writing process and of the thought that needs to go into this. And this is this very serious thing, and taking that away and not fetishizing it. I'm going to use your stealth draft.
Well, I'll remind me to send you a link, because there's a stealth writing episode.
So, I mean, I always send them that chapter of a book called Bird by Bird.
Yes.
And this book is so useful, right, for the stealth writing or the tricking yourself, because I love her. I always send my students the shitty first draft chapter, when they're kind of like, oh, but this writing isn't good enough. Like, it's meant to be not good enough. This is the shitty first draft. And they find that quite freeing. And they're just the idea of just taking things slowly, or looking at a tiny bit of a piece of writing, rather than thinking of it as a chapter or as a thesis or as a novel or whatever, again, is really useful. And I like her nice attitude to the process of writing.
I do love this book, but another thing that you're reminding me of is the thing that I've translated in different exercises to vulnerability is strength, because she talks about it's hard and you're not super confident the whole time, and you don't know it's all going to be okay, but you come to the page honestly and you give it your whatever is yours. And we talk about emotions going past the window and thoughts going past the window, and if it's sparrow, robin, you don't judge the sparrow or the robin. So when panic, fear, comparison, judgment, when those are going past, this is the thing, it's what we were talking about earlier, not letting the feeling become more important than the fact. You keep moving forward.
Exactly. And then somebody, I think it was on your podcast, said, or maybe it was you, I can't remember, sorry, said, I can fix it in post-production. And I just thought that was a nice phrase. It might be Rosie Garland.
I think it was Rosie.
Yeah. I feel it was somebody who kind of worked in different areas of writing, not just novels. But I like that idea that, I'll fix it in post-production, because it feels it's this confident way of saying it. Well, yes, of course, this is just part of the process.
And actually it's so true in other areas of life, that the reason we can enjoy this is when I said to you, if you want to, or I wanted to look something up, we can do that, and then we come back with it, and it's fun, and it's real. And that's so much better than being on a terribly strict script where you just have to do everything very quickly, and we're not machines. We're not word robots.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why, that's why we're wanting to read works written by humans rather than anything else.
Absolutely.
Because that's what's meaningful.
Connection, not perfection. Thank you very much. So creative confidence, we've touched on this in various ways already, I know, but when you are having a moment and you are lacking creative confidence, because we all have the moments, right? That's in the contract. Is there anything that you say to yourself or remind yourself of that sort of works for you?
It is such a huge thing. And I think I kind of thought this might go away, this sort of the horrible little voices, you know, that are going, you're not good enough. What do you think you're doing? And they don't go away. It seems, you know, once you've written a book, and probably once you've written lots of books. So recently I've been trying to remind myself, just first of all, you have done this, you know, it can be done.
You can say the accolades, you know.
Yeah.
This would be a very good time to say them. If you want.
You can write a best-selling book, etc. You know, and get nice reviews and see people reading your book.
Didn't I see instant at one of those?
Oh, yeah.
That word came up at one point.
which is always nice to be as an instant Sunday Times bestseller. Although
that's the one. Shall we say that? Instant Sunday Times bestseller. Feels quite nice saying that.
It does feel nice. And actually that's, I think as writers, we all need to get better, or lots of us need to get better actually at saying this out loud. And also thinking of it as a positive thing, not as a negative, because I think for all my kind of, oh yes, I've done it once, I can do it again. There's also that now you horrible little voice who has decided to turn up going, you know, it was a fluke. You'll never be able to do it again. Or it won't be as good this time. So it's like, oh no, now there's extra.
Because they're never happy, are they? Those voices. It's either you can't do it and then you do and you have, and then it's, well, you certainly can't do it again. Or, you know, it's whatever reality gives us. This gives us the worst interpretation.
It's completely horrible. Yes. Yeah. But I do want to say, and I don't want to be, I feel this is going to sound really sycophantic, but I do remember you did a workshop that I went to, and that you did the kind of the what if game. And I think this was part of
yes.
I was looking at my notes for this earlier, excuses bingo. And I think it was kind of, there was a bit of a process, but we did this. And I think you talked about this with Rosie as well. And maybe you need to explain it.
I'm always happy to, because I love this thing. So excuses bingo, and you've got your massive great noughts and crosses board, maybe 5 across, maybe 5 down, and those squares or rectangles need to be just big enough for a sentence or a few words. And into those go the things our brains shout at us along the lines of, my sister's the creative one in our family, X wouldn't want me to tell this story, Y said something really nasty about my writing in 2018, and that's true because he said it. What if I never finish it? What if I finish it and it's crap? What if I finish it and it's boring? What if I finish it and it's weird? And I also, for the record, love how weird and boring can go right next to each other. You're like, come on, brain. Do not see the irony. But yeah, it's filling it with all of the things that our brain will say to us rather than let us do the writing. Because the thing is, status quo feels like safety. That's why people stay in abusive relationships. That is why people stay in jobs that bore them to tears. Yes, there is always a what if that is negative. But the thing is that what if that's negative isn't any more real than what I do in this game, which is the positive opposite. So, for example, my sister's the creative one, or when so-and-so was my age, they published 5 novels or whatever. A, my sister cannot write what I can write. Square B, what if the thing I write is the thing that some reader needs at exactly the right time? Because the thing about all of us as writers is there will be books that have saved us emotionally, reassured us, made us clear about who we are and what we're doing there. And the thing is, we may never hear from that person, but they exist. Because pre-social media, when we were growing up, we didn't get to tell writers when something was cool. Not that easy. It's easier now, which I like. But you couldn't. But it was still true. They were still doing amazing things. And this is what Excuses Bingo does. It gets you to do the positive opposite of each of these. And it just reminds you everyone is as scared as I am.
Exactly. And I remember, because I've sort of been to all sorts of workshops and things, but this is, so I've kept this. Obviously, this is not helpful for podcasts, but showing Rachel, we're going
to YouTube it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're totally YouTubing that bit.
So I think this particular workshop was about, especially about the sort of, kind of performing your writing or talking about your writing.
Was it public speaking for writers?
I think that yes. Yeah. And it was brilliant. So these ones are particularly about, I don't know what I'm talking about. Nobody will be interested. They're going to ask me hard questions, or what if? And then I've got all these kind of, but what if they are interested? Or what if I just say, I don't know, and it's fine. And it was so helpful. And so kind of, I think this has totally worked for me as well, that negative and positive what ifs.
Yeah.
What if my editor hates this? What if it doesn't do as well as the first book? What if this story doesn't make sense? Again, it's such a simple thing, just changing it to sort of a what if. Well, what if she does like it? And what if it's more successful? And I think just that kind of little change, and also just the noticing how often you think those negatives and catching yourself and sort of making yourself change it into more of a positive. And it doesn't always work, but I think you kind of notice when you're falling into the trap. And so I've just found that really helpful. So as I say, I don't want to be sort of like, here's Rachel's workshop, but it was really great.
Thank you. And it is so lovely to hear, because I know for absolute fact that most of the people listening to this are going to be looking at what you've done going, wow. And the wow, objectively, when it isn't ourselves it's happening to, it's important to remember that what they can see is every bit as real as any feeling going on about it, that book already is in the world, it exists, it's there, it's yours, you did that. And that is in the world forever, that exists. As will the next one, if you want, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. This is what we have to remind ourselves, is that it's unique.
Yeah, exactly. And to try and stop those little voices that are starting to do down your kind of your achievements.
So I'm going to stick a health warning on stop the voices. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Leaning on the box, sweating. I can't hear you. Negative voice. Shut up. Blah, 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 blah. Let go. Stop sweating. There is an invisible check on my desk where I take those feelings and I say, yes, I can hear you. Pat, pat. Not ignoring you. Sit. I'm getting on with my writing. Because that's possible. It's not possible to make them go away. I am existing, even though I could tell you very coherently and eloquently exactly why I'm a failure at blah, 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 because I am a human. That is what it's like in here. Of the interviews that I've done, the ones where people have been willing to say, this scares me, I worry about this is what it's like to be me, are the most popular interviews. And that makes me really happy. The emails I get about interviews are when people have felt that this is why I keep memeing over and over again. Vulnerability is strength. You can sit there going, well, here's why I'm brilliant. Here are my millions of, and that's, very nice for you. But I'd rather connect. I'd always rather connect. Because guess what? I'm a reader and a writer. And I would always rather have connection than perfection.
Yes, exactly. And again, I think it shows how important kind of podcasts and all the writing resources and the workshops, that you run, that you can go to, just how important they are. And I would definitely say that I've found it very, very helpful going to, not only listen to podcasts, but doing workshops. And I'm somebody who struggles a little bit with the kind of, let's talk about our feelings and, and sort of share vulnerabilities, which I realize is a really good thing, but I've always found it hard. But I think, the fact that I kind of come back to this workshop where we did have to to share feelings, vulnerabilities, what we felt. I think it shows how important.
I mean, I hope not have to. Volunteer.
I know it was in a very safe, nice environment, I should say.
But no, I get what you mean. But I think also people have this picture in their head of what sharing feelings is going to sound like. And actually, the way that we have, like two academics drinking tea and chatting, talked about this is what's going on in my head, this is what's going on in my head, this is what's going on in my creative life. It's probably not what I think sometimes people picture before they've experienced it, that it's more, these are the objectives, these are the obstacles, here's what I'm experiencing. And it's research, really. It's research into self so that you can use what's available to you as strongly as you can.
Yes, exactly. And I think you often think of that writing is this, oh, well, we can all do this. We can all just sit down and make up stories, or, it's not a big thing that we have to work on. But of course, we do have to work on it, but not only from the writing point of view, but how we are dealing with it ourselves. And I think sort of putting in that work has been really useful.
Yeah, because it's getting to know your writing, and it's getting to know yourself as a writer, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And what you get to know is that all writers, the vast majority of writers, are also full of these should fairies and the awful kind of the brain gremlins. And
my very old friend Liz had brain weasels. She made badges that said "shoot the brain weasels."
Exactly. So all this is a way of as you say, I think you're totally right. Not getting rid of them, but learning to live with them.
Yeah, learning they can't actually do anything unless we mistake feelings for thoughts, thoughts for facts.
And I've always found that, spite can be a good motivation for writing. So I'm like, I'll show them, I'm going to write this second book and it will be great. And yes, that is going to motivate me to make them shut up.
Yeah, I said this almost as a joke recently, that there was somebody who essentially said an idea that I still love was not going to work anyway. What they meant was it wouldn't work for their taste. And although I couldn't get rid of the memory because it was somebody I looked up to, I could do what Richard Curtis did. I haven't done it yet, but the Richard Curtis technique, if you notice that every Richard Curtis film or short or anything has somebody fairly unpleasant or a bit pathetic called Bernard. And then you find out why. Because somebody at university called Bernard said something shitty about Richard Curtis's writing. And now we have Bernard and the Genie. And we have Bernard in For Weddings and Funeral. And if you work through, Bernards are plenty.
Oh, that is fabulously petty and wonderful revenge. I love it.
And I've thought of a great name I'm going to use when I'm ready. But the thing is, the best revenge is always to live well, isn't it? I don't know who said that other than me. It wasn't me.
Yes,
not
but
first.
I think to live well, to keep doing the things you want to be doing. And if somebody tries to do you down or stop you doing that, well, they might they should be careful, because they might get written into a film or a book as a very unpleasant character who, depending on the genre, might come to an unpleasant end. And you're a horror writer, so people who cross you should really be careful.
Was it Nora Ephron? It ends in something along the lines of when beginner writers are worried about, can I use this material? I mean, the sensible thing I always say about that is, yes, you can, because it's always your version of the material. It's not objective truth. It is you being honest about your subjective truth. But the quote ends, yes, you can. They should have treated you better. And, they're different ways of looking at it, but with the same result.
Yes, Nora Ephron was wise. We should absolutely, listen to her.
I love Nora Ephron so much. We've been through the habits and things that work, don't work, mentalities. You've mentioned there is a cat in your life. There are also humans in your life. Any sort of tips around or things that work for you around boundaries of either time or space?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I feel I'm lucky that, obviously my cat does not understand the importance of writing in my life. The humans around me do. So I think, having good humans who understand that writing is important to you, whether you have a deadline or not, that it's a part of your life that they should, even if they don't understand it, I think is really important. And, and some of my sort of friends and family will even ask questions about it and look interested in the answers, which I'm always very, very grateful for.
Are you a door shutter? I'm a massive door shutter.
Not really, but that's mostly because of the cat. Because the cat will be perfectly fine. She can be in the other room, doesn't want to be near me. But as soon as I shut the door, even if she's in another room, fast asleep, she will be howling outside the door in a second, because there's obviously something exciting going on in the room, and she wants to be part of it. So that's...
I do miss cats. I really do.
Yes, she is a unhelpful but lovely writing companion.
So I guess it's more in the communication for you. It's saying, I am going off to do this. Do you do the sort of, I'll be back at this time, or just don't talk to me until I say it's safe? Or what's
Yeah, I think just sort of, this is writing time. I can't do this because I'm writing. I think people are quite, if they sort of love you, they will understand. So
it's being clear, isn't it?
It is being clear. And this, I think, is important for our own well-being, is to make sure that we give the non-writing time to other people as well, and to ourselves. So that actually, I think sometimes I find, especially if I have what is a writing day now, I do have more time to write. So I've dropped down my hours, so work part-time and have a couple of writing days. I find that sometimes the time can just kind of get away from me, but I haven't really been working particularly well. But I also haven't been resting or doing anything enjoyable or spending time with people. But I've just spent all this time kind of going, oh, this isn't working. So I think for me, one of the important things is to just go, this is writing time, but I'm also definitely going to, I'm stopping for lunch and properly stopping, or now I'm having a conversation and I shut my laptop and I'm not thinking about writing. So I think that kind of giving quality time to your writing, but also the quality time to the other parts of your life, whether it's just for you or for other people, is also really important.
Oh, it's so true. And it's so cumulative, isn't it? When you are there for your writing, you can be there for your not writing.
Yes. Exactly. And sometimes you do have those days where you think, oh God, I've not achieved anything. I've wasted the day, the whole day. The whole day has been fucked, to use Nigel Planer's words. And it can feel so frustrating. But I think you just got to go, okay, well, there's going to be another day. So, and not to beat yourself up too much, because I've definitely had many of those days with both the writing and kind of, the academic writing as well.
And there's always something to take from how the day went off its rails. Like, I think that's why I like the phrase that if you don't start with writing in the morning, that's today fucked. I enjoy that. Thank you, Nigel, for that, for humour, because it's so crystal clear. But there's other bits too, that if, for example, you're a person who admins in the morning and then writes, or whatever it is that you do, and then you don't do it and it doesn't work, that's useful information, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And, and I keep thinking, I will find the perfect ratio of writing to other things, and I have not found it yet, but... No.
Well, you know why? You just use the P word.
There isn't. Yes, there isn't. There isn't a perfect ratio. Oh, you can tell that you're a writing coach.
I love the Great British Bake Off, but Prue Leith and I use the word perfect in very different ways. She says it's not done unless it's perfect. One of my first creative writing teachers, Naomi Wood, her PhD supervisor used to say to her, "Done beats perfect." And I've always seen in myself how when I start going in, like I'm guest blogging for a company that I adore. I can't say what yet, but it'll be out soon. And I was so happy that this was happening, and I saw myself going straight back into, this has to be everything it can possibly be, so that they know how great I am, and also so they know how great I know they are, and gets loaded and loaded. And then I went, just going to show them this bit, and they loved it, and I moved on to the next bit. Because, pressure comes off, idea that you have to be perfect comes off. And they realise, they didn't want it. They wanted you. They want connection.
Exactly. And people's ideas of perfect are so different that you can't possibly, make something that's everybody's going to think is perfect. So, so I think this idea of good enough, I actually think is really helpful. And I remember my PhD supervisor as well saying, don't try and make it perfect. It's, you're trying to do this thesis for a certain reason, and people are going to take different things out of it, and some people might love it and some people won't, but it is going to be enough. And then you have to move on to do something else.
Absolutely. That's really good advice. Is there any sort of other habit or exercise or ritual that you'd recommend for people out there starting out?
Well, I mean, one of my rituals has come from, so I like listening to white noise when I'm writing. Ooh. And this has come from having tinnitus. It's very, it can be very irritating. And if I'm somewhere silent, I think this is why I like writing outside or in cafes, because that hum of noise is helpful.
Yeah.
But I started using white noise. And actually, I found it really helpful for concentration. And so I use it now sometimes, even if I am somewhere else and there's a bit of background, because it's just a certain type of noise that for me really helps me concentrate. White noise. I mean, actually, when I was writing The Cautious Traveller, because it's set on a train and because YouTube has anything you could possibly want, I would listen to these videos that were basically, 10 hours train ride across Switzerland in the rain or something, or Orient Express ambience, and they were so helpful because they would have the train noise, and really helped that. It really helped me with the book. And the book I'm writing at the moment is set by the sea. So I'm listening to, the sound of waves. So that's my tip for especially if you're kind of sensitive to what you listen to, maybe want some noise, but don't want music. I can't listen to music when I write, but this kind of noise I find very, very helpful.
Oh, that's beautiful. How much, if at all, and it's okay if not, am I allowed to ask about the next book?
Oh yes, you are. I feel better about it after our talk. Actually, I feel I can go and do some writing after this. It is a work in progress. It's another alternative history, although this time it's set in the 18th century, and it is set in partly on the North Yorkshire coast, because I really love it up there. So I'm sure you know it if you were at Hull. So don't know if you know Flamborough Head and Bempton Cliffs. Up there. So really fabulous bit of coastline with puffins and incredible seabirds and these incredible cliffs.
I love puffins.
Oh, puffins are my favourite bird. I know, very. So there are puffins in the book. Sadly only in a small role, but anyway. So it's set there, partly there and partly in Greenwich in London, and it's all about the sea, and it's kind of about, I suppose, the human relationship with the sea.
Wow. Yeah. Are they making you have a hand in date, or are you just taking time and thinking?
Well, I mean, they're being very good, actually. My editor has been great. And so I am saying September to get it handed in, but this is just a first draft. But yeah, they said quite early on, oh yeah, we don't see you as a book a year person. Don't worry.
Yeah. And that's good, isn't it? Because although deadlines are great, they have to be the right deadlines for you.
Yes, exactly. So I think a deadline is helpful, but also a book, it takes a long time, and yeah. So it is still very much a work in progress.
Instant Sunday Times bestselling author Sarah Brooks, thank you so much for joining the Writers' Gym.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. It has been really lovely to chat to you, as always.
You've visited the Writers' Gym with author and coach Dr Rachel Knightley. Production and sound design are by Ashley Lexine, and theme music is by Chris Gregory. To join a Writers' Gym workout online or in London, as a guest or as a member, visit writersgym.com or email thewritersgym@rachelknightley.com.